Do you see the stress right now more along the lines of teenagers, or is it just or is it just spread around kids in general?
I would say in terms of virtual learning, I'm definitely seeing that more among adolescents and teenagers. But I would say just COVID in general impacts across all grade levels. We've been talking a lot about stress, and what's difficult about stress, as an adult or a kid, is that, our stress hormone impacts, our development of memories and how we process memories. And so that's challenging for an adult, but I think it's especially challenging for our kids that are going to see the ramifications of this and how they've been processing the pandemic, what's been going on in our world right now for many years to come.
Are you concerned with the younger kids just being able to have the skills to coexist with their classmates when they come back in because they have been isolated?
Yes, I definitely think not only interacting with their peers too, but just getting back in the swing of the structure and routine of school. I've also noticed before COVID, there was a shift. If I even think back to, when I was in school, part of the way that we connected with friends was, going to the movies and driving. And even in the past few years, we've seen teens more and more get their driver's license later, not connecting as much in person, focusing on digital connection. And that has just been magnified throughout the pandemic. And they're having a much harder time assimilating back into the school environment when they do come, or they're losing a lot of friends because they're not seeing them on campus. And if they have anxiety about reaching out online, which only adds to the isolation that they feel throughout, the pandemic and moving through it.
So let's transition because we could talk forever,
Yeah.
and you have a life. I don't know if I do, but you have one. So, with respect to divorce and kids, what concerns are you seeing? Are you seeing just too much stress being put on these kids, or what are you seeing?
I would say it definitely adds another layer of stress. So we're seeing a lot of stress in terms of just anxiety surrounding the pandemic and the state of the world today. We're seeing stress with virtual learning. And then divorce just adds another element of stress to that. And I think, anytime we have an area of our life that is increasing in stress, we rely on the other areas of our life to not be as stressful. So if we have kids that are experiencing a lot of stress at school, and then they're impacted by a significant amount of stress at home, that's only going to lead them more to feel like they don't have an outlet, or they don't have support, or a safe place to be able to talk about, the different things going on in their lives.
So would your thought be that when these kids are going, in other words, they're being impacted and perhaps being impacted more than they had been in the past, just have them see a therapist, have them talk to somebody, make sure they're okay, make sure they're having the resources that they need to. Sounds like it's a pretty good, simple test to make sure everything's okay. And if everything's not, we know how to adjust, right?
Yes, I definitely think that, whether it's a mental health professional, whether it's an adult, a family friend, a teacher at school, obviously, if there's a more serious mental health issue, we want to get them into some sort of, therapy support. The way that I like to talk to kids about, mental health support and just support in general is that there are different layers of support, right? So parents are a layer of support, friends are a layer of support, a therapist can be a layer of support, medication can be a layer of support. So especially when stress goes up in our lives, helping them advocate for when they might need to add another layer of support, whatever that looks like for them. And utilizing the resources that they do have available, such as, their teachers or their school counselor, or, a therapist in the community, a family friend, anything that can just strengthen the support around them as the stressors in their lives continue to rise.
So, red flags. We have the obvious, right? I want to hurt
Yes.
myself, but there's
Yes.
others, right? Like,
Yes.
what can you tell us what those stressors would be so people know what to look for?
Yeah, so I typically like to think of stressors encompassing four different domains. So one that we would, assume to be pretty obvious is emotional. So we have, any kid that's overly emotional, overreacting, unable to control their temper, or overwhelmed with more than one emotion. Another domain we can look at is social. So that would be anything having to do with relationships, family, friends, issues, with a classmate. Also, that goes back to low self-esteem, self-worth. And then we have the domain of behavioral or academic, falling behind in classes. I know in the video they talked about disturbances in sleep. Our kids are overwhelmed, they're staying up later, and then they're sleeping through classes, and we're seeing more absences, drops in grades, having more difficulty with time management and organizational skills. And then, of course, situational. That's what we're talking about when we're looking at, we're in a pandemic and then add a divorce on top of that. We're seeing a lot of grief, some due to COVID and some due to other extenuating circumstances. Also, if a kid is going through a move, any type of situational experience, those are just different areas to look at. Of course, if you notice one of those things or one or more of them, that's a good indicator that it's time to add one of those additional, layers of support.
And my thought, and I'm not going to add to anything you said because what you said was brilliant, but my thought with these kids is get them back to other kids, get them back to sports, get them back to some sort of activities.
Mm-hmm.
So at least they feel involved, at least they feel a part of things, at least they don't feel so isolated. And they can go back to some sort of rules and some sort of structure, and things kind of get back to normal. Because at home with a divorce, there's no structure. There's just, especially with the high conflict stuff.
Yes. Yes, I have found that, even just participating in extracurricular activities, if they're mostly doing virtual learning, have some sort of opportunity to interact with their peers has been very helpful. I also think that, one way that we as adults can help our kids is educating them on, how to advocate for themselves and also how to advocate for their friends. So I know you mentioned, earlier, in our talk that, we're seeing a rise in self-harm and suicidal ideation. Usually the first person that a kid's going to talk to about that is another kid. And so helping our kids understand, what issues need an adult and who are safe adults that you can go to. And that, your friend's life is worth more than your friend maybe being mad at you or things like that, because that's the fear, right? Is if I tell, my friend's not going to trust me anymore, they're going to be upset with me. And in my experience going to a trained safe adult, that can be done in a very appropriate, helpful way that doesn't, create conflict within the friendship or hurt that relationship in any way. So the more adults that we have talking to our kids about that and helping them, advocate for their friends and advocate for each other, the better.
Now you gave me a PowerPoint. Can we put this on?
Yes, of course.
Okay, cool. Just so everybody sees it, because I want them to, because you've done such a good job, as well as Dr. Davenport, and as far as Judge Diaz, everybody killed this today. Okay, so this is kind of small, but I think everybody can see it. So these are things, guys, that you want to be looking at. This is kind of a summation of what Emily's talking about to make sure that we're making sure these kids are being taken care of. Emily, I know you have a life, and I know you have to get through it. I couldn't be more thankful, and I wish we got to do more cases together. I think you're a quality resource for parents going through divorce, period.
Thank you so much. And I'm so thankful for you having this hobby and taking the time to spread awareness to these issues and having us talk about them, because it is so important. And, I know there's going to be some changes coming up, but I have a feeling that we are going to be seeing just the ramifications of everything over the next few months and years. So I'm so grateful to you for spreading awareness.
Thank you. Well, to me, it's this whole thing about Sossi Talk, as ridiculous as it is to create community awareness for particular problems that we're going through. And especially during this COVID crisis where we can't talk, at least we can all get together and, in part make fun of me, because that's good, but we can also hear your quality speakers and talk about problems that we're going through today. So I can't thank you more. Okay?
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. So I'm glad you guys listened. I'm sure most of you are clicking out by now. We're going to find another topic to talk on Saucy Talk when it's ready. Until then, I appreciate everybody. Stay safe. I don't know if I can tell you to not wear a mask, but use common sense. And we'll talk to you later. See you later on Saucy Talk.